I got my first letter from EON Productions when I was a 14-year-old budding writer. It thrilled me quite a lot. It was from Stanley Sobel, who was the associate producer to Harry's Salesman and Cubby Broccoli. His letter really bent over backwards to be quite polite to me. He told me in his letter we don't have an opening for a 14-year-old screenwriter. It was in a package. A large envelope with the coming soon of the movie Goldfinger stamped on the envelope. Inside there was a Call Me B1, a brochure with Bob Hope and Anita Ekberg. Being produced by Harry Saltzman and Albert R. Broccoli. I still have the letter, by the way. I have it framed. I really wanted to work for them, and I was very excited to hear from Stanley Sobel. In 1978 I went to London with my ex-wife and I immersed myself in the world of James Bond. I met Dennis Salinger at International Creative Management, who was the agent for not only Sean Connery, but also for Michael Caine, Peter Sellers, and Roger Moore. Dennis Salinger was a great help to me in suggesting the people that I should go meet and how I should meet them, and so forth. So I went down to EON Productions. They were at 2 South Audley Street in London. I introduced myself to Reg Berkshire. Reggie was really one of the nicest gentlemen. I have to say this because I always carry a fond place in my heart for Reginald Berkshire. He was one of the kindest people that I've ever met, and he spent a lot of time talking to me about the world of James Bond. Cubby Broccoli made no James Bond films between 1989's License to Kill, with Timothy Dalton, and 1995's GoldenEye, starring Pierce Brosnan. The reason was a contract dispute with MGM over the profit distribution. Broccoli threatened to move James Bond to another studio. Then in the early 1990s, Cubby Broccoli announced through Lazard Frere in London that his James Bond empire was up for sale. The asking price, $600 million. I was already familiar with the EON Productions office at 2 South Audley Street, and I had met Reginald Berkshire, Broccoli's production controller, more than once and liked him. I wasn't being delusional when I decided to go after the James Bond franchise. I really wanted it, and I knew what I was going to do with it. Here's what I had in mind. I knew several top executives at a major Swiss pharmaceutical company who had the power to raise the money we needed to take over EON and Danjak and make us partners with United Artists. EON Productions, Limited, and Danjak, Broccoli's holding company, would become subsidiaries of the pharmaceutical firm and be totally controlled by them. As you know, Danjak is named for Dana Broccoli, Cubby's wife, and Jacqueline Saltzman, Harry's wife. It is the legal rights holding company for the Broccoli family that owns EON Productions, even though Harry sold his shares. Though I had no experience to speak of, I had fervent zeal. I would be made general manager of EON Productions, Limited in London, and offered a 10-year contract with salary and preferred stock. I wanted to be in total control of all future James Bond films. I was ready to fly to London and take up residence in my new offices as soon as all the paperwork was complete. I also had a secret agenda. I wanted to sign George Lazenby to a 4-picture deal to return as 007. If United Artists did not agree to that, I was going to have the people in Geneva think about switching studios to 20th Century Fox, where I knew the right people to talk with. However, what I learned the hard way was this: Albert R. Broccoli never had any intention of letting his empire slip away from him. His putting James Bond on the auction block was not for real, regardless of how many times Broccoli said he was ready to let it go to the highest bidder. That bidder never came because Broccoli wasn't going to sell 007 to anyone. I received a letter one morning from Mr. Norman Tyre, the attorney for Albert R. Cubby Broccoli, instructing me to stay out of the business affairs of Danjak and EON Productions, Limited. It was not simply a request, it was a threat that legal action would be taken against me if I persisted. I know this because when I came along, I hit a nerve. I was serious about an immediate takeover, and Tyre set me straight. I knew who Norman Tyre was. He was the legal eagle behind James Bond 007, and he worked out of Los Angeles. He was the man most responsible for getting Cubby Broccoli started in the Bond movie making business. Tyre was tough. He had fought it out with everybody over the years and sued everyone, including Sean Connery, on Broccoli's behalf. Norman Tyre knew everything that there was legally to know about James Bond and the worldwide Broccoli operation. Tyre was also one of Broccoli's closest friends. He wasn't about to let a whippersnapper like me take control of his most precious asset, 007. Reginald Berkshire had told me in 1979 that Mr. Broccoli hates the Bond novel, Colonel Sun by Kingsley Amis, and will never film it. The first book I put on my list to film was Colonel Sun. In 1985, my last visit to EON Productions, Reginald Berkshire was still there, though a little grayer, and the subject of John Gardner's Bond novels was raised. Mr. Broccoli does not like the Bond novels of John Gardner. He would never film any of them. The second book I put on my list, once I gained command of EON Productions, would be Icebreaker, a James Bond adventure by John Gardner. I did not understand Broccoli's aversion to the works of Amis and Gardner, except that by not filming them, he would not have to spend an extra $200,000 or so paying Ian Fleming Publications for using them. Also possibly the rift that had occurred between Ian and IFP about poor finance soured him on that plan. John Gardner spent some time living in Charlottesville, Virginia, while he wrote his seasonal James Bond thrillers, and I know he had no interest in writing screenplays for the movies. I don't think he ever had any contact with Cubby Broccoli. I received a letter from Gardner once about the possibility of George Lazenby and I optioning one of his Boise Oaks adventures. Gardner said something about Broccoli. Why couldn't they film one of his many Bond adventures? I knew why. Cubby Broccoli hated all Bond novels that were not part of what's now being called the James Bond canon. These are the original books by Ian Fleming. Anyway, Norman Tyre's letter was very revealing. It was just as well. The pharmaceutical company in Switzerland soon grew weary of evasive answers from Lazard-Frere and MGM/UA and walked away from the project after 6 months. This was an enormously humbling and deflating experience for me. I really looked forward to wearing Savile Row tailor-made suits and smoking Jamaican cigars with my brandy in what had once been Cubby Broccoli's offices. I soon realized my dream of Ronald Payne presents George Lazenby as Ian Fleming's James Bond 007 was written in smoke and water. Ian's offices are in London, so they can be near Pinewood Studios. Several years back Ian moved out of 2 South Audley Street, where Sean Connery, George Lazenby, Roger Moore, and Timothy Dalton all went to get their assignments. The last I heard they had moved up to Piccadilly Circus, and that is where I sent Curtis Bush, the former middleweight kickboxing champion from Virginia, when they were shooting Tomorrow Never Dies. I contacted Debbie McWilliams, their casting agent, about using Curtis in the film. Curtis had never lost a bout, and he was defending his title in London, the night the producers were supposed to watch him. That night, he lost the title for the very first time. Can you imagine? Poor Curtis. No Bond movie. The coveted role went to a large blonde actor, Götz Otto, the assistant to Jonathan Pryce, and Bond history moves on. The next match Curtis Bush was in, he recaptured the championship. By that time, the film was well into production. Curtis starred in the motion picture, The Dark Angel, which is on DVD under several different titles, too many for me to keep track of, just now. In December 2004 I drove to California from Virginia. I was looking for work again on a Bond picture, and I decided to go to Danjik at their MGM headquarters on Colorado Avenue in Santa Monica. Before that, the rear end went out of my Cougar on Wilshire Boulevard when a garbage truck pulled suddenly in front of me. I pushed hard on the brakes in order to miss crashing into the truck. The rear end fell out immediately, and the car would not move another inch. In the heaviest afternoon traffic I have ever witnessed, I pushed the car, alone, uphill and out of the way, with traffic passing me on both sides. Finally, I rolled the car into a parking lot and received permission to leave my car until the following day. I walked across Wilshire to go to the bathroom. When I returned, my car was gone and has not been seen since. My first hour in Tinseltown. 15 minutes after arriving in Santa Monica, my car was stolen, along with the contents inside. I lost my electric typewriter, all my cash, my clothes, books, etc. Everything I brought with me, including George Lazenby's phone number. The shock of losing my automobile did not stop me. The next morning I walked from my motel room to MGM on Colorado Avenue. The entire MGM workforce was in exodus to their new facilities in Century City. Everybody was leaving, except Danjak, LLC, the owners of James Bond. I didn't even have to go through a guard check to see them. I called them from a phone downstairs and then proceeded to find them in the building. 15 minutes later I was sitting in the most Spartan office I had ever seen. Whereas, EON Productions in London had been wood-paneled walls and cozy, though cold in the outer offices, where the secretaries greeted the public, the Danjak offices were stark. The furnishings consisted of one hardback chair and a short couch. There was a coffee table with one book about James Bond. It was well worn. On the wall was a full-size replica of Cubby Broccoli's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Nothing else. There was a coffee maker with styrofoam cups peeking at me through another door. A single secretary sat disinterestedly behind a desk. She was younger than the shoes I was wearing. The office manager came out. Female. Redhead. There are no jobs here at Danjak. She spoke so rapidly I had difficulty understanding her, and she might as well have been on speed, the way she behaved. I thought what a shocking contrast between the friendly manner of Reginald Berkshire, who entertained me in his beautiful offices in London, and this place. She never invited me to sit down. I think she did offer me a cup of hot tea, but I'm not really certain. I did not feel welcome. The Danjak offices could have just as easily been the offices of a community college. Or a correctional center. Concrete. Impersonal.
Ron Payne had a dream so bold to hold the Bond franchise in his hands, pure gold. He saw Lazenby in the spy's sharp suit, a vision of action, sleek and absolute. But the lawyer's shadow loomed so near, a whisper of lawsuits filled the air with fear. Ron Payne's ambition met a steel cold wall. The dream of Bond began to stall. He knocked on the doors of Eon's throne, tried to make Broccoli's kingdom his own. The dice were cast, but fate played coy. The lawyer laughed, said, "You're just a boy." Kings were like a storm, tension in the night. Ron fought for his vision, gripped it tight. But the weight of power, the weight of law, turned his grand ambition into a fatal flaw. But the lawyer's shadow loomed so near, a whisper of lawsuits filled the air with fear. Ron Payne's ambition met a steel cold wall. The dream of Bond began to stall. He knocked on the doors of Eon's throne, tried to make Broccoli's kingdom his own. The dice were cast, but fate played coy. The lawyer laughed, said, "You're just a boy." The gavel struck and the dream did fade. Ron walked away from the plans he laid, but the fire in his heart still burned so bright. A cinematic vision lost to the night. To the night.